Hello guys, this is Doronsmovies and welcome to the third episode in the big Q&A. Usually for the start I would cover the channel for the first 10 minutes, 7 to 10 minutes, but I won't really be talking about the channel that much as I want to use the first section of the video to discuss some of the spoilers we got from the Chronicles novel. They're not really spoilers, I mean the book is gonna be out in like 15 days or something like that, so Blizzard released it, or the Dark Horse, I think that's the publisher. They released some of the snippets from the book, like a few different pages. It covers a lot of really important stuff. It's just like a lot of the elemental, old god and all that. So I'll cover that in a bit. I just want to talk a bit about the channel, but not really too much about it. So some of the things that have been happening is the video I did, like the 4 possible expansions. That video did so much better than I expected at first. I really don't know why. I honestly did not expect the video to do that well. I was expecting it to do worse than the other top 10s have did, but it seems to have a lot of views right now, also a lot of dislikes. I also didn't really expect that. I kinda expected some dislikes because speculations and all that. The only problem is like, when you have a video, it's always good to have a big video. Obviously helps the channel, attracts new viewers. There's always good stuff from it, but once the video starts getting bigger and kinda outgrows the sub base, you start getting a lot of these random people and a lot of these like stupid questions, stupid arguments. Of course, I'm not one of those people that says like everyone that says something critical against you, he's like a hater, he's jealous or anything like that. But there's like some people that just have like these stupid arguments, makes no sense. Like I had people complaining about me putting the captions automatically, even though you can literally just like click the little button on the screen and just like stop the captions. Like if it bothers you, could have just clicked it. You don't have to write an entire comment about that. So yeah, there's been a lot of stuff happening with that, but I gotta say I'm kind of excited to finally have like a lore video do well, even though it's a speculation and I kind of didn't expect it. So yeah, that's a bit about the channel. There's not really that much I want to talk about at the moment. I've been really excited. I wanted to make a full video, but I didn't know how to do it because this Chronicle stuff, the book will be released in like 15 days. I believe it's March 15th. So I don't really want to make a video and then the book is gonna be out in like 15 days. I will make a video at some point, probably around April, because I think it's gonna take like a few weeks for the book to ship. Then I will do like a full review, but for the start I just want to discuss some of the snippets. So let me just look in of some of the notes that I have here. Alright, so the most interesting stuff for me is the old god and the elemental lore that we received. We learned that the elementals were on Azeroth before. I think we kinda knew that before, but it wasn't really confirmed. The elementals were these forces that controlled Azeroth pretty much, and they used to war with each other all the time. You had Ragnaros, Terrazane, Alakir. They were just constantly at war. It says like Terrazane would like raise these mountains, and Ragnaros would use fire, and Alakir would use winds, Neptulon, water and all that. So they were constantly at war. The world was a chaotic place just filled with elemental disasters. So at some point the old gods arrive from some unknown place. I don't think it was really said, but maybe in the book once it is released they might say what is the origin of the old gods. We don't really know at this point, but pretty much they describe the old gods as cancer, as they root in and they spread and corrupt the world. So they aren't native, they just come from some unknown place. The elementals for the first time ever band together and they form a force against the old gods and they fight them. And I believe at that point they were enslaved by them, but I don't think it was actually mentioned in the snippet we got, but we do know that they later served the old gods. So when you kinda think about it, I was actually kinda thinking about this. They kinda really got screwed over like the elementals. First, they were constantly at war, then the old gods invaded, so they fought them. They were then enslaved, and then they fought for them, and then they were enslaved again. They were trapped in an elemental plane by the Titans, so a lot of them are still out there, so they kinda got a really bad part of the deal. So next on, from what we got of these spoilers, is we'll learn that once the old gods arrived, they created 2 races. First one is the Enraki, known as the Faceless Ones, and the Akir, which I already have videos about. I recently covered a lot of them. If you don't know who the Akir are, they're pretty much the Mantid, the Kiraji, and the Nerubians. They used to be this one race known as the Akir. Now, I think I actually got most of the lore correctly in the video I made before. Even though like this Akir lore, Asia-Kir, the entire empire is just filled with retcons, changes, and contradictions in general that you don't even know what's going on. Like when I was researching for that video, there were so many different contradictions. I just had to kind of take what was out there and just kind of make sense of the entire thing. So I actually think I got most of the stuff right. I didn't have the information before, but I kind of had the same expectation of what happened with them. So pretty much what is the kind of interesting thing is that the Akir were laborers and they built these bases for the old gods and these shrines, pretty much what would later become the Black Empire. At some point the old gods actually united as Y'Shaarj, who is apparently, they also said that he's the strongest of all of the old gods. Pretty much Y'Shaarj took his own holdings and united them with the other old gods. They all had like these minions building their stuff for them, so at some point they united all of their territory, and that's how the Black Empire was created. A lot of people wanted me to talk about the Black Empire in the past. We had like literally no information, like the lore fact and the part I mentioned in the Top 10 World of Warcraft lore facts, I believe was part 5. I mentioned a bit about the Black Empire, but so far that was about all of the lore we got. Well, in this snippet we got a bit more lore, but not really that much, but I think this is a really good sign that we will get a lot of the Black Empire stuff once the book is actually released. So pretty much, if you don't know, Black Empire is just an empire created from the different territories that the old gods had. They were separated at first and then they united and pretty much controlled over all of Azeroth. Now, what is kind of confusing for me right now is we know that the Black Empire was defeated once the Titans arrived because they saw they were just destroying the world. What kind of confuses me is that we know that the old gods were enslaved. I mean, not enslaved, I mean they were imprisoned. The elementals, they pretty much created the entire elemental plane to imprison the elementals, and also the faceless ones were imprisoned as well. Yet the Akira, they still remained. They had their own empire, Asia-Kir. They created an empire after the Black Empire, so it is kind of confusing, like why weren't they imprisoned? It might be explained in the book, I really don't know at this point, so I'm just basing it on the information that we know. But I'm thinking it's gonna be something like they either managed to escape, maybe the Titans didn't see them as much of a threat, or maybe something happened, like some big event similar to the Sundering that broke their prison, or I don't know, something could have happened. Right now I have like no idea, so it is just a speculation. Okay, so the other things we have received is some information about the trolls and the Night Elves and the Dark Trolls, and a lot of the stuff you already kinda knew before. It was confirmed, but we didn't really get that much information. Most people at this point already know that the trolls evolved into Night Elves, the Dark Trolls, that is how the Night Elves were created. But the interesting thing is that we finally got the map of Azeroth before Sundering. This kinda excites me because I use this map all the time. Most people, I guess, they don't really care that much apart from the lore significance. But we have a map of Azeroth, like the official one by Blizzard, some 15 to 16,000 years after the Troll-Akir War, and we pretty much get the basic idea of what Azeroth looked like before the Sundering and before the Night Elves really formed as a civilization. Alright, so I'm gonna switch to the map right now. I usually don't edit these videos, but I really need to put this so you guys can see what I'm talking about. I'm looking at the map right now, and it is kinda interesting. For me, like, the first impression is, the Azeroth just seemed like so much bigger and so much different. That's probably because, I mean, obviously it's just like united into one continent. But if you look at it, I mean, if you kinda base the borders, I guess, I mean, you have Kalimdor here, as you can see it on the left side. You have the Pandaria part there as well. Obviously you can see the Mogu and all that stuff below. I mean, you can see Ankiraj, Azjol-Nerub, and Mantives. I'm guessing that's the Mantid Empire. That's, I guess, what they're split. As you can see, it says aftermath of the Akir and the Troll War, so this is pretty much after the Trolls have defeated the Asia-Kir Empire, so they were kind of completely split off. You can see the Drakari here, those are the Northrend Trolls. They used to be pretty big. You have the Zandalar, they were the main Trolls, but later on they split into these different groups of the Trolls that, as you can see on the map, were completely have outgrown them. You have the Gurubashi Empire, which is mainly in the Stranglethorn Vale, Citadel and that part of the Azeroth. This is pretty much where Zul'Gurub is. Yeah, you can see it on the map there. You have the Amani. They're pretty much in Quel'Thalas. They were at Quel'Thalas mainly, but as you can see, they control this huge landmass before. You have Zulaman, which is pretty much somewhere very close to Silvermoon, pretty much based on the similar map that we have before. Also, you can see Zul'Farrakar, that's part of the Gurubashi. You have Uldum, the Titan City, Ulduar all the way at the top, not really much change with that. Interesting thing is the Well of Eternity. I was at first thinking like, why is the Well of Eternity so small? Like, we always knew that the Well of Eternity was huge, but it actually is huge. I mean, it's this big on the map. It must be really big for it to be on the map of that size, so it is pretty big. It was kind of weird for me thinking like, how did that small thing blow up the entire thing, but it was just filled with magical energies and all that. So after that we have the Dark Trolls. They were like on these different sections. I'm not certain if these are like different tribes of the Dark Trolls, but I'm guessing it's just like the areas they inhabited. But obviously like this little pink, it's got like dark pink area of the trolls around the Well of Eternity. I think those are the trolls that later on would evolve into the Kelderai because of the influence of the arcane magics. That is pretty much how the Night Elves turned from trolls into the Night Elves. So let's see, is there anything else interesting on the map? Obviously, yeah, the Mogushan Vaults. That should be about it. But I don't know, just like Azeroth just seems like so much bigger than you would expect it to be, because you can see Mount Hyjal there, like only like this part of the left area. Like the line around Uldum and Mount Hyjal, that is pretty much Kalimdor, and the line below Zulaman and Zul'Gurub, that is about like the Eastern Kingdoms. This part of the Thundering Mountain is pretty much Pandaria, and the Ulduar area and a bit of Gundrek and Azjol-Nerub is, I guess it's Azjol-Nerub, I don't know why I say it is Azjol-Nerub. That part is Northrend, so all this big landmass in the center was completely destroyed. Maybe this part could have gone to the other side of Azeroth. Maybe it's like somewhere like on the other side of the globe that a lot of people have been talking about, but it is kind of interesting when you look at it. Like the major part of Azeroth, like the center of it, is completely gone, and you only have the broken isles, which are pretty much the same size of the Well of Eternity as you can see it here. Okay, so let's get into the rest of the information that we have. Yeah, there's only some of the interesting stuff that we have. A lot of the stuff about the Kelderai, we already kind of knew about that. It just kind of expands on that. So we learned that the trolls have attempted to resurrect Lei Shen once in the past, but they have failed and were stopped by the Pandaren. Pretty much after the Mogu defeat, the trolls just invaded Pandaria, as they were owned land in Pandaria, but their previous deal kind of broke when Lei Shen died and the rebels just took over Pandaria. So the trolls invaded and they completely destroyed everyone in their path, because once the Mogu were defeated, they were like the main army. No one really was there to protect the land of Pandaria apart from the Pandaren that were defending against the Mantid on the walls, but they were pretty much the entire defense force. So when trolls, like this giant force with these war machines, these dinosaurs and all this stuff, like when they invaded, they just completely destroyed everyone in their path. And then we learned that once the Pandaren started using the Cloud Serpents, they won in the battle against the trolls, and they managed to stop the resurrection of Lei Shen, which would then like 11, I believe it's around 11,000 years. Later on we would resurrect Lei Shen, but we stopped it from really happening in the past. Alright, so I think that is all that it is that we have right now. I kind of rambled way too much here, but I was just like looking at the map. I just wanted to give my direct live commentary, even though this video is not really live. So let's not waste that much time. Let's get into the actual lore questions. The first question is by Byron. There is two questions. How do you feel about the Gilneans potentially taking Gilneas back? My main is a Worgen. No, I'm not a Fury. And the idea of us actually getting our own city instead of some tree in Darnassus really excites me. Second question, what is your overall opinion on Warlords of Draenor? Gameplay, lore, etc. Alright, so I'm just gonna go over the first question. As someone mentioned in the comments, I think someone replied to your comment, pretty much we would need a Horde city. Like if the Alliance was gonna get a Horde city because of the game mechanics, we would need a Horde city to balance it out. And I think this would be a perfect opportunity for us to get Undermine for the goblins. If you don't know what Undermine is, it's this big underground city somewhere on on C'Thun that we never really explored, but we learned so much about it. Blizzard in the past said that they will add it at some point, but that never really happened, so I think if they manage to get Gilneas to the Alliance, this would be a great way to give another city to the Horde. I'm kinda like completely off topic on the question, but I personally think it would be a great idea because it would give Blizzard the chance to include more Worgen lore. I mean, I know we're already getting some in Legion, but this would give us a chance to expand a bit more into Gilneas. And also, another thing is that it would be really great if they would continue that like Worgen architecture style. It was very unique, like the entire Victorian England and this like dark, I don't know, you know what I mean, like the Gilnean style is just like so dark in all these different interesting buildings. They kinda included that in Gilneas in the Cataclysm, but they never really repeated that at any point in the future. I mean, sure, they might have used some art assets with similar style, but they never really continued with that, so I think this would be a great opportunity for them to actually continue that and bring more Worgen lore. Another thing that I've kind of been thinking about is there might be a bit of a problem with the starting zone, which is in the ruins of Gilneas and the entire war with Gilneas, and the capital being in the same place. I'm not certain how that would really work, but I think they could pull probably something off with the phasing system, even though it would be a bit weird, because just imagine like a new player starting a Worgen, he's fighting the Forsaken, the Worgen curse and all this stuff. He does that, and all of a sudden you just like, Gilneas is rebuilt and there is like this entire new city in like a matter of minutes. It is kind of weird. I think that's gonna be a bit of a problem, but I think they could pull it off. Maybe they can start like constructing pretty much what they did with Orgrimmar. Like it was never really finished, but you always had like these machines that were building Orgrimmar. It was never really finished. It was under construction, so that is a bit of a problem, but I think Blizzard would be able to figure it out if they really wanted to reintroduce Gilneas. Alright, the second question is, what is your opinion on Warlords of Draenor? This is a really big discussion. I could probably go into this for like an hour, but I'll try to keep it short for the sake of this video. And also the fact that I have to edit this audio, which takes so much time, and I don't want to make these videos like 3 hours long. So my opinion is pretty much similar to 99% of the WoW community, and that is, I'm pretty disappointed with the end result. I was definitely excited at the start for the expansion. I can't really say I thought it was a great idea at the start, because I knew that a time travel expansion might cause a lot of issues, but I was definitely excited to finally see Draenor and the orcs, and I gotta say, like, they fulfilled a lot of the stuff, like with the zones, they looked amazing, but with all of the different lore issues, I was kinda disappointed, like, very much. I mean, it's obvious that the time travel thing, especially alternate universe, which is not an exact copy of the world, is going to be very problematic, but I feel like Blizzard used that excuse way too much, and the entire expansion just feels like it could have been like so much more than what it actually was. I mean, Organ Doomhammer, we barely saw much of him, and he died after like 30 minutes of questing or something ridiculous like that. There was really no Broxigar that a lot of people were expecting to see. The Rexar part, like we saw him, but he wasn't really that big. The Ogre story, it started with Highmall, and we had that short story that was really interesting on the website, and I was expecting to learn all about the ogres being Titan creations and seeing the island that they seemingly scrapped, but this really went nowhere. Nothing really happened with this interesting story that started. Also, the Old God influence and that entire part in Spiders of Iraq, the Taylor's Garrison, this mystery that we had, it was never really finished. We really had no idea what happened with the entire thing. It never really led to anywhere. And another thing is the Frostwolf clan lore. Even though the questline, I gotta say, was really good and the cinematic and all that, I'm still really completely confused with them changing the history of the Frostwolves, and just in general, there is so many stories in Warlords of Draenor that went completely nowhere, and I was also really disappointed with just 2 patches of content. I mean, one of them was not really even a content patch, as Blackrock Founder was in the beta and it didn't really introduce that much of the story. Now, obviously, I don't want to jump on the hate train. I know some people really do just make videos about that, but I just don't want to talk about how bad the game is all the time. But I gotta say that I think out of all the expansions that I've played so far, I've played World of Warcraft the least in this expansion. I was excited for the first 2 months like most of the people, but I barely really played the game ever since. I mean, I log in every now and then, mainly when I record videos, but I don't really play the game as much as I used to before. The main problem is because I don't really PvP or do any raids, and I also barely have enough time to do RP at this point, so that is the big factor. I mean, that is obviously on me, but I mean, I gotta admit that it really isn't that much stuff you can do in World of Warcraft, and the entire garrison thing just gets really repetitive, especially since they didn't really add anything apart from the Hellfire Citadel and the Blackrock Foundry. So, not to repeat myself all the time, I just feel like this expansion could have been so much more. It had so much potential, it had the best questing, in my opinion the best looking zones. Maybe Legion will top that, but before that, Warlords of Draenor had the best looking zones. Seemingly an interesting questline that could have been expanded so much, and so much stuff could have happened, but in the end a lot of the stuff was just scrapped, removed, and just bundled together with the excuse like there is no time. So I just feel like the expansion was completely ruined and that it could have been so much more than what it actually was. Alright, the next question is by Lord Jaraxxus, and he asks, are C'Thun and Yogg-Saron actually dead or not? Alright, so obviously, I mean, I'm not Blizzard, I can't really say for sure, but I'm almost completely certain that they're not, as obviously the Titans had to imprison them since they just couldn't kill an old god. They did kill Y'Shaarj, but he just completely infected the entire Pandaria continent, so obviously you can't just kill old gods since they are so deeply rooted into the world that you only have to imprison them and just make them not a problem for a certain amount of time. Obviously, I mean, when we fought them, they were in a weak state and we were able to actually defeat them, if you can even say that, but I feel like we just they were like super weak and we just weakened them a bit more, so they just went nowhere, like they just went into hiding. But I'm pretty sure that they're still out there, and if we did actually kill them, I'm pretty certain that Azeroth or a big part of Azeroth would be heavily affected, and I think that would be pretty apparent. Like if we killed an old god, I'm pretty sure we would be able to tell if we did or not. Alright, so the next question is by Tara Elia, and it says, before Arthas went to Northrend, did the Icy Continent have any lore behind it? Or was it like Pandaria, no story whatsoever until Mists of Pandaria? Alright, so I wouldn't really say Mists of Pandaria had no story, I just covered the part from the upcoming novel. Obviously it had some story, it had the Mogu, the Pandaren Rebellion, the monks, all the different races, the Gilneas that used to be Murlocs. It had a lot of stuff, but we didn't really know too much about it until recently. But for Northrend, I would definitely say yes. It definitely wasn't as chaotic as it was when we visited it, because the Lich King was there and the Scourge and all these different threats to the world, but Northrend definitely has a big part of lore and the history behind it. I mean, we have the Akir, also known as the Nerubians, forming Gajol Nerub, which was a giant kingdom, and they were a pretty big force. Like, their kingdom was pretty big, as you could have seen on the map, and they were pretty important until the War of the Ancients, when they were defeated and most of them were enslaved or just killed and resurrected by the Lich King. You also had the Drakari Trolls. They had a huge empire in the north, as you could have also seen from the map before. There was Ulduar, the Titanic Watchers, and all the Titan constructs there as well. The Vrykul, you can also count them in. You had the Tuskar, the Volvar, and just a lot of different bigger and smaller races and societies that lived there. I'm guessing there were some wars, but we don't really know about that. There was also, I almost forgot about that, there was also the big dragon graveyard and the blue dragon, so, and the Wormrest Temple. So yeah, there is definitely a lot of lore when it comes to Northrend. Just most of it wasn't so relevant to us until Wrath of the Lich King, when we actually had to invade Northrend. So yeah, pretty much the answer to your question is yes. Alright, we have, I believe, 3 questions left. The next question is by Blackinger. My first question is, where are you from? I mean, what country? And the second question, why aren't more dungeons raids about the past? Or maybe Warcraft 4? Alright, so obviously the first question is not about the lore, but I thought I would put this in just quickly because people ask me this all the time on the stream and on the YouTube channel. I get so many messages. Just for the information, I'm from Serbia. Some people think I'm from Siberia. I know a lot of people say that, but Siberia is in Russia. I know the name might be similar, but but Siberia is this gigantic area in Russia and Serbia is in the Balkans. So yeah, I just thought I would clear that out just for the people. I mean, I know people are still gonna ask me this question, but just for the people that are watching this video, you might actually like know this and not ask me in the future. So the second question about the lore is, why aren't more dungeons, raids about the past? I mean, I guess the main reason is because there's really no relevance. Most of the caverns of, if you're talking about the caverns of time, like us going into the past, there was always something about the infinite dragonflight and the task of trying to prevent the timeline. I talked about it in my infinite dragonflight video, like the latest video I did before this one. But yeah, pretty much there has to be some reason for us to travel there. Like we have to prevent infinite dragonflight corruption and them trying to alter the history. So yeah, that's pretty much about that I can answer for that question. I guess I could also mention that, I mean, Warcraft 4, I personally think that would be great if they created Warcraft 4 as the War of the Ancients, and us being to play as the Night Elves, the Torrent that they actually added later on in the novel. I think that would be an interesting thing, but really that is just up to Blizzard to decide. Alright, the next question is by C'Thun or Yogg-Saron. What exactly is the Scarlet Crusade, what do they want to reach, and what are their goals? Alright, so I believe I talked about this in the video I did just a bit earlier. I'm not certain which one it was. Yeah, the Balancer video. I know I talked about it in the Balancer video, but pretty much they're mainly just survivors of Lordran, paladins, warriors, and just people that were part of different resistance factions that were in Lordran that were fighting the undead. At first, they might seem fine because they want to exterminate the undead and just retake Lordran, but there are a lot of underlying different issues. First is that Balnazar infiltrated them and caused a lot of chaos within and corrupted many of their members, as he killed the leader, initial leader known as C'Thun and just pretty much controlled the Scarlet Crusade after it was formed. Second is, this also is related to the first one, the Balancer influence, but a lot of them were very paranoid and just completely fanatical. They thought people were undead even if they're not, or they would kill people for no reason. Just kinda think of the similar mentality to Arthas purging Stratholme, although not really in that because Arthas really had no choice, but they do have a choice, so they might like purge an entire town just because they presume they might be undead. So you can kinda see the problem with the Scarlet Crusade. So pretty much in conclusion, what was once the noble cause was completely corrupted and changed, and then their forces were just completely destroyed by the Scourge and Wrath of the Lich King, and in the Cataclysm, like, the remnants were just raised into the undead, so at this point they barely even exist and pretty much were almost completely destroyed. Alright, so the last question is by DragonZX, and he asks, what is your favorite dragonflight and why? Alright, so this is a bit of a weird question. I don't really have a favorite dragonflight. I mean, I like the dragon aspect lore, but it's not really my favorite part of lore in any way. But if I had to pick one of the dragonflights, I'd probably go for the bronze and maybe the blue because of the magic stuff, but probably the bronze is the main one because there's just like so much stuff. So much like interesting stuff with the timelines, the infinite dragonflight, Nosdormu, time portals, timeways, and all that stuff. I mean, it can really be confusing and lore breaking at certain points, and if you really read into it, I can almost guarantee you that your head will hurt from all the different contradictions and just Blizzard like altering whatever they want with the time travel stuff, which is why I'm usually against time travel when it comes to any franchise, but I kinda like the bronze dragonflight because they have this task, which is completely irrelevant like to our world, because obviously in our world, as far as we know, I mean, we have like one timeline, but in Azeroth there's like all these different timelines constantly going on, and alternate universes, there's past, future, and all that stuff. So pretty much like the bronze dragonflight has a task to just make everything normal and just make everything stick to one timeline. So yeah, that is about all that is. I don't really have any more to expand on that. Alright, so that is all I have for this video. Feel free to ask your questions. Something I forgot to mention, I don't really answer questions or comments. I usually try to answer as many comments as I can, but I don't really do it on these videos because I try to keep most of the questions to actually answer them in the next episode. So you can also send your questions by Facebook and Twitter. I try to respond to Facebook messages, but I can also feature them in the video. So if you have something interesting, or even if it's not that interesting, I will try to answer it really quickly in the upcoming episode. And I will try to do this like once a month, once every 2 to 3 weeks. So yeah, that is about all that is. Thanks a lot for watching, and don't forget to like and subscribe if you're not subscribed to the channel already, as it really helps out and keeps all the videos going. And thanks a lot for taking the time out of the day to watch this video, and see you next time.